June 8th, 1943. A very calm sea turns to pure hell. A thunderclap splits the horizon as IJN Mutsu erupts from within. A crazy disaster at sea. No warning, no enemy, only annihilation. Witness the tragic sinking of IJN Mutsu. How could it be? Hashirajima Bay rests quiet beneath a grey morning haze. The battleship IJN Mutsu, pride of the Imperial Navy, floats motionless, her crew at ease after routine drills. Then, in an instant, the calm shatters. A blinding flash erupts from amidships, followed by a thunderous explosion that shakes the bay. The number, 3 magazine detonates, sending a wall of flame and steel skyward. Nearby ships are rocked by the blast as fragments rain down like molten hail. For a moment, no one understands what's happened. There's no air raid, no warning siren, just chaos. When the smoke begins to clear, half of Mutsu is gone. Her stern slips beneath the waves, dragging hundreds of men with it. The water boils with oil, debris, and bodies. Survivors cling to wreckage, calling out names swallowed by the sea. In a heartbeat, Japan's once mighty battleship has turned into a graveyard, destroyed not by an enemy but by something far more mysterious. To understand her fall, we must return to when she defined Japan's pride. You see, the launch of IJN Mutsu marked a new era for Japan's Navy as an era of ambition, confidence, and global recognition in 1921. Built as part of the 88 Fleet program, she symbolized Japan's determination to stand equal to the great naval powers of the world. At over 39,000 tons, she was a marvel of engineering, sleek, heavily armoured and armed with 8 16-inch guns, capable of striking enemies far beyond the horizon. To the Japanese public, Mutsu wasn't just a battleship, she was a floating emblem of progress and national strength. Crowds even gathered at Yokosuka to witness her launch, waving flags as her massive hull met the water for the first time. Newspapers hailed her as the pride of the rising sun. For 2 decades, she stood as a symbol of power and prestige, her presence alone enough to command respect. But beneath the grandeur of steel and ceremony, her story was already drifting toward tragedy. But even the legends can fade when the world around them changes forever. By the early 1940s, IJN Mutsu was no longer the marvel she once was. The rise of aircraft carriers and fast-moving fleets had rewritten naval warfare, leaving even mighty battleships like her in the shadows. Still, the Imperial Navy refused to let its symbol of power fade quietly. Mutsu underwent multiple refits, new anti-aircraft batteries, radar installations, and structural reinforcements, each an attempt to keep her relevant in a rapidly evolving war. But obviously, modernization couldn't disguise age. Her machinery groaned under strain. Her armor was outdated against aerial threats. Within her crew, pride mixed uneasily with doubt as young sailors still viewed her as sacred, while veterans sensed the truth. Japan's naval future belonged to carriers, not guns. Assignments grew routine, morale dimmed, and the great battleship that once embodied hope became a relic of a fading doctrine. And by 1943, Mutsu remained majestic but weary, an aging titan anchored more in nostalgia than strategy, waiting for a role the modern world no longer needed. And deep below deck, unseen pressures began building long before the explosion. Life aboard Mutsu was a strange mix of ceremony and monotony. For months, the battleship saw little action, anchored more often than sailing, her days filled with drills, inspections, and endless maintenance. To outsiders, it seemed peaceful. Inside, tension simmered. The crew was a divided one, seasoned veterans who remembered Mutsu's glory years, and young recruits drafted from a war-torn Japan. Many of the newcomers were restless, inexperienced, and weary of strict naval discipline. Rumors spread of favoritism among officers, of harsh punishments for minor mistakes, and of growing resentment below deck. Isolation only deepened the unease. With the ship often anchored away from combat zones, sailors grew frustrated, forced to prepare for battles that never came. Some turned to pranks or defiance, others withdrew completely. By 1943, morale had thinned into silence. Orders were still obeyed, drills still performed, but the unity that once defined Mutsu's crew was cracking. And beneath that strained calm, something darker was taking shape. And when the blast came, no one could explain how or why. On June 8, 1943, it was 12:13 p.m. when Hashirajima Bay turns catastrophic in an instant. A blinding flash erupts from Mutsu's number, 3 turret, followed by a thunderous shockwave that tears the ship in half. Eyewitnesses on nearby vessels describe a pillar of fire shooting skyward before vanishing into a cloud of smoke and ash. Within moments, Mutsu's stern disappears beneath the surface, leaving only twisted steel and oil burning on the water. There are no enemy submarines, no aircraft overhead, no alarms, just sudden annihilation. Rescue boats race to the scene, but the devastation is total. Over 1,000 sailors gone, most without a trace. As survivors cling to wreckage, the questions begin. How could a battleship's magazine ignite without warning? Was it a freak accident or deliberate sabotage? The Imperial Navy orders silence, sealing all reports. But among the survivors, whispers spread of a suspicion that someone aboard Mutsu may have lit the fuse from within. What followed didn't really add to clarity or even truth. There was only silence and unanswered questions. In the aftermath of Mutsu's destruction, the Imperial Navy moved swiftly towards the truth, but to bury it. News of the explosion was classified immediately. Families of the dead were told their sons were simply missing at sea, with no mention of the ship's loss. Even within the Navy, officers were warned, speak of Mutsu and face punishment. Behind closed doors, a secret investigation began. Divers surveyed the wreckage in Hashirajima Bay, finding twisted metal and evidence of a violent internal detonation. Theories surfaced regarding faulty ammunition, spontaneous combustion, or a mistake in handling volatile powder charges. Others whispered of sabotage, perhaps by a disgruntled crewman, a theory fueled by the unrest that had plagued the ship for months. But no proof ever really surfaced. Every lead dissolved into speculation, every report carefully edited before it left the Admiralty. By late 1943, the inquiry was quietly closed. The official verdict, unknown cause. The unofficial truth, lost beneath 130 feet of silence and shame. Decades later, the sea would finally reveal what Japan tried to forget. In the end, 1,121 sailors perished, many sadly entombed within Mutsu's shattered hull. Only 353 survived, and their testimonies were fragmented, censored, or forgotten in the fog of war. The Imperial Navy erased her name from records, pretending the disaster had never happened. For decades, families mourned in silence, never told how or why their sons died. After the war, divers rediscovered the wreck in Hashirajima Bay. The remains told a grim story, massive internal detonation, catastrophic in seconds. No enemy, no battle, just a warship undone by her own heart. To later generations, Mutsu became more than a tragedy. She was a cautionary tale of pride, secrecy, and human cost, and how a navy that demanded silence over truth lost both its honor and its men. Even today, veterans speak her name with unease. The sea around Hashirajima remains eerily calm, as if still holding the echo of that explosion, a ghostly reminder of a mighty empire consumed by its own silence.